Welcome to Bold Voices, a production of the Community Foundation of Broward, where we explore Broward's biggest issues, get to know some of the people and organizations creating a bold impact in our community, and take a deeper dive into the world of local philanthropy with the experts at the Community Foundation of Broward. And now it's time to be bold.
Welcome, hello to Bold Voices, a podcast production of the Community Foundation of Broward, where we always encourage you to lead with love. I'm your host, Ellen Jaffe. Here at the Community Foundation, our team works nonstop to improve the lives of Broward County residents, and that's done through grants to organizations that provide education, food, health services, employment, diverse cultural arts, and much, much more. But our folks go beyond just their jobs in their efforts to ensure that all residents have opportunities to live their best life, to live happy lives. Our own Kirk Englehardt, who you know from Kirk's Corner, he is the Vice President of Marketing and Communications here. Now, on his own time, he's also a member of Broward County's Hate Crimes Task Force. And he's going to talk more about that later. But to tell us how it all began, let's talk to the guy who started it all. It is my pleasure to welcome our guest today, Broward County State Attorney Harold F. Pryor. Hi there.
Hi, Ellen. How are you doing? Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure. Here's the silliest question. What do I call you? Mr. State Attorney, Counselor, Harold? My dad's name was Harold. Do I call you Daddy?
No, you can call me Harold. Harold is perfectly fine. I actually prefer it.
Okay, great. So you have such a long history in Florida, and your credentials in working in the law enforcement system are fantastic. Can you share a little bit of your own background and your path to being elected Broward State Attorney in 2020?
Yes. I grew up in Florida. I'm a sixth-generation Floridian. I grew up in the Nature Coast area of the state of Florida, Pasco County to be exact. Grew up in a small town, Dade City, Florida, that still had remnants of segregation from years and decades and generations prior. And growing up in that environment and having family members who were involved in the civil rights movement, family members who were involved in the movement to get individuals their right to vote or equal access under the laws in the state of Florida, it's in my DNA. Having a great aunt who had told us a story of witnessing lynching at a very early age, at the age of 7 or 8, and it being a traumatic experience for her. Having family members who were part of Southern apartheid in this country, a time period in this country where people of color were treated less than or differently or less than citizens, American citizens who had also contributed to the American dream or the American experience, but were treated less than. And so that's my story, growing up in that realm of the state, but also growing up in a rough neighborhood, seeing the criminal justice system treat people unfairly and understanding that we need a criminal justice system to be more fair and equitable. And so with that background, with all of that being in my DNA, I grew up with the mindset of wanting to be an attorney, not to make money, not to have a big home or fancy cars or a big house, but really to be a lawyer, to contribute, to make the system, the judicial system, the criminal justice system more fair and equitable for all people. And ran for office in 2020 and was successful. And I've been in office for 5 years now. And we've had an opportunity to start a hate crimes unit to address the issues of hate crimes surrounding or involving hateful acts towards various people and members of our society.
So obviously, your background is what prompted you to establish the Hate Crimes Unit. It was only a year after you became state attorney. Does that take a little gumption?
It does, but it wasn't hard for us to do just based on the data and my philosophy to what I call 21st century prosecution is really looking at the data, looking at the numbers, looking at the trends in your respective jurisdictions and moving and governing your office and objectives and goals accordingly. And so before my election in 2020, we saw a rise in anti-Semitism across the country, across the nation, but also primarily in South Florida. Also, we saw a rise in hateful acts towards members of our LGBTQ plus community, particularly our transgender community. And what I found on the campaign trail, and it was sad for me to admit this, that I was unaware of the plight of our transgender community around the world, actually, and just see the violent acts that were being perpetrated against them, and the law enforcement community not adequately addressing those issues or just really disregarding those complaints that we're getting from members in our transgender community. And we have to understand, we're probably one of the most diverse, and I mean that, we're in the most diverse county in the state of Florida and one of the most diverse counties in the United States of America in the South, even more diverse than Miami. I mean, if you look at Broward County, we have a large Black and Hispanic community. Combined, the Black and Hispanic community make about 60%. That's about a third Black, a third Hispanic. And then the remaining 40% is split between our Caucasian communities. And then if you look at South Florida, Broward County in particular, we have 149,000 Jews who call Broward County home. We're the eighth largest Jewish community in the United States. And then on top of that, we have 75,000 Muslims in Broward County. And in Woodland Manors, which many have said and believe that it's one of the most heavily populated gay cities in America. They've coined themselves the second gayest city in the United States of America. We're diverse. So we saw an uptick in hate crimes from 2016, and we saw a consistent increase even up until last year. And so it was an easy decision for me. It was an easy decision for our office based on the numbers and the statistical trends to start this hate crimes unit and to develop this hate crimes task force.
Let's start with that word, hate, which we use it just in casual conversation. I hate getting stuck in traffic. And then when you put it in terms of a crime, there's a very specific definition of what is hate and what is hate speech, and what is a hate crime. Can you explain the difference?
It's all viewed in a legal and a constitutional perspective. When we think about hate along and in this country, fortunately and unfortunately, in certain circumstances, hate speech is permissible. It's allowed. It's protected under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And so I'm often say, and many members of our office often say, and our hate crimes prosecutor, Veronica Walker, who's done an amazing job, does a great job of educating our community. When we have those conversations, many of the acts, the speech, if you will, that's done or uttered by individuals can be hateful, right? It's hateful. It's boring. It's disgusting, right? However, under the First Amendment, many of that speech is protected. However, if that hateful speech is accompanied by an act, and that act is criminal, then the phrase hate crime then comes into place. So that's the difference. You have hateful speech, which is permissible under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, but then you have hateful speech that results in a crime or is accompanied by a criminal act. Then that's when it's problematic, and then that's when we deal with it, and then that's when someone can be subjected to criminal prosecution. You know, hate crime is a criminal act, or it's an attempted criminal act by a person or a group of people against an individual or their property or another group of people. And so that act or those actions constitutes an expression of hatred towards a victim or towards that group of people based on certain personal characteristics. And those personal characteristics are laid out in statute.
Are there different levels of hate crimes? We know there has been graffiti on, say, synagogues in certain areas. How does that compare with someone burning a torch in some front yard?
Right. So what's unique, our hate crime statute in the state of Florida, so it's based on someone committing a hate crime, conducting a criminal act or attempting to commit a criminal act. And when they commit that criminal act against a particular group of people or people that exhibit a personal characteristic, it could be based on race, color, gender, religion, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, whether someone's homeless, advanced age, mental or physical disabilities. It's an exhaustive list. But the hate crime statute, it applies, or it's essentially an enhancer. So, for example, what you mentioned, the example, and I'm getting to it, the example is a graffiti. That would be the example of criminal mischief, right? If it damages someone's property and it's based on a certain amount, right, then that could be a criminal mischief. And then what happens is if we're able to prove that that person's actions constitutes an expression of hatred towards a particular group, let's say if they graffitied a synagogue, right, or a mosque, you name it, right? And we're able to prove that they did it for the purpose of perpetrating a hate crime, and it's towards that category of individual, then we would apply a hate crime to the criminal mischief statute. Therefore, criminal mischief can be either a misdemeanor offense or it could be a third-degree felony offense. Now, if it's exhibited that that criminal mischief is a hate crime, then it serves as an enhancer, meaning what once was a third-degree felony now becomes a second-degree felony because it was a hate crime. So the maximum penalty for a third-degree offense, let's say if it's criminal mischief, it's a third-degree offense, the maximum penalty is 5 years imprisonment. But if it's exhibited that that person created or perpetrated that criminal mischief with the design to commit a hate crime towards that particular group of individual, then it enhances it to a second degree felony where the maximum penalty for that is 15 years imprisonment. So hate crime statute in Florida merely serves as an enhancer to any of the crimes that are in the criminal statute in the state of Florida.
You mentioned a number of different populations and different characteristics that put someone in the category of being a victim of a hate crime. There are a couple of elements to the Broward County Hate Crimes Task Force that are really unique, and I compliment you for them. So I hope you can tell us a little bit about your thinking on each of these, starting with the task force. It's really remarkable. If you go to your website, broward.sao.com, you go to the hate crimes page, you've got a couple of videos, and there are members of the task force featured in them. It's a microcosm of Broward County, fully integrated, representatives from almost all of these communities that are most often targeted as victims of hate crimes. How did you accomplish that?
We accomplished that through really just getting our boots on the ground, just getting our feet out there, having those conversations and reaching out to community partners and thinking outside our box. What I've noticed in crime fighting in the law enforcement realm, oftentimes we tend to operate in our own silos. And then when we do come to the table and we do have conversations, these task force are really just stacked with other law enforcement agencies. Rarely are we reaching out to the community partners or individuals that this is directly affecting. And if we do in the criminal justice reach out to nonprofits and community partners, it's almost like a gatekeeping situation. It's a political favor thing. Okay, this person voted for me or this group of individuals voted for us. And so we're going to bring them to the table and then we'll leave out this group of people when actually the group of people that you might be excluding are the people that are most negatively impacted by the issues that we're trying to address. And so it was important for me to look at the data, look at the statistics, and then identify, okay, where are our problem areas? Where are we seeing the particular group of people, or what are the group of people being particularly targeted? And then next, my directive to our members, and particularly our hate crimes prosecution team, was to identify groups, entities, organizations that have their ear to the ground, that are involved, that are at ground zero, having the conversations, that are connected with the people that are being victimized. And so we were able to identify these groups, the Urban League. We were able to identify a group that deals with the transgender issues of victimization that we see from time to time in the criminal justice system, Transclusive. We were able to reach out to so many other groups, whether it be our Muslim population, our Jewish population, Jewish Federation, whether it be various organizations in Broward County that address our affected groups. We wanted to bring them to the table so, one, they could have those conversations with us and our law enforcement partners, whether it be law enforcement agencies, Broward Sheriff's Office, Fort Lauderdale Police Department, and other police departments around the county, to share information and to also have an exchange of ideas, and also to give them a lens as to what's going on in those respective communities. And so we were deliberate in saying, okay, what are the numbers showing? Once we knew what the numbers were showing, how do we identify those groups that actually are tapped in with these segments of society and that one can share information with us in the law enforcement community? We could educate members of the law enforcement community, but also members of our law enforcement community could educate them so they could get that information out to their constituents, to the people that they serve, to the segment of society that they're more wired into. And so that was our effort, and it's proven to be a successful effort in us being able to build a strong coalition, to have an exchange of ideas, and to combat the evil of hate.
How do we go about educating the people who have so much hatred within them? How do we reach them and help them understand that we are all people, regardless of what we look like, regardless of what God we pray to, who we love. We are all human beings. It's so hard to change what can be systemic or what someone was taught as they grew up and was modeled from parents, so they don't know otherwise.
Right. And, I struggle with this but also I will say this as a prosecutor, as someone who is charged with enforcing the law, and oftentimes we're putting people in prison. There's a part of me that is extremely optimistic and hopeful that people can be rehabilitated and certain acts and certain things can be rehabilitated. Look, I had a grandfather and grandmother who was involved in the civil rights movement. And the only reason why they were involved in the civil rights movement was, one, they wanted to hold us true. They wanted to hold society true to those basic tenets and principles in the U.S. Constitution, the ideas of freedom and equality for all and justice for all. But also part of them was hopeful that the people that was exhibiting the hatred towards them because of the color of their skin, because of who they prayed to, that they could turn from those ways, that it was ignorance and sustained ignorance. And oftentimes, many of the people, what we find in many of these cases that we come across, particularly with our younger generations, is that it's really not hate. It's just ignorance. It's because it's learned ideas, learned concepts, learned acts. And half of the times they're doing things that they don't even know the reason behind it. You have kids that are drawing swastikas. They don't even know the meaning behind it, or they're saying certain terms. They don't even know the meaning behind those terms. But once you educate them and once they know, then they're enlightened. But then there's that group. There's that percentage of individuals where they're not going to change. There's nothing that we can do to change their mindset and ideas. And so how do we do that? And we combat that through having information sessions, having educational forums in different quadrants and areas of our county to be diverse and reach people where they are, meet people where they are, but also going to the schools and educating children at a very young age to understand some of the things that they're seeing online, some of the things that they may hear their parents or guardians or older brothers and sisters say, and really educating them on, hey, that's not right. It's hateful, and you don't want to be a part of that. And then obviously there's an education component once someone comes within our jurisdiction. If someone does in fact commit a crime, and I hate to say this to so many people, not every hate crime that is being perpetrated by an individual in this county, not every person is going to receive prison time, right? And so there are opportunities there for those individuals who aren't going to receive prison time, who may be put on probation. We get them a part of some of our educational training that's been developed by our task force, by our various entities and groups. And so they can learn more about the individuals that they've encountered, the individuals that they may have harmed, or those individuals that they may have done hateful things towards, and try to educate them on how they can be better members of our society, be better informed, and understand that their acts were in fact hateful, and that they shouldn't exhibit those acts ever again. And oftentimes what we find, when that person is adequately and properly educated as to their actions and how it affects others and other people, there is a moment of enlightenment for those individuals. And we see turned and changed behaviors. And so I think it's threefold, right? Like I said, it's meeting people where they are, educating people, getting out to those communities, going to different places, going to different areas. And if someone does commit a crime, and if they do come into our grasp, and if they are within our jurisdiction, we try to use, if appropriate, if it's something that we think we can do in this particular situation, use this as a teachable moment while still holding them accountable.
Do you think that by engaging the nonprofits, people are more open to hearing what's being said rather than when it comes from law enforcement?
Yes. And that's in every arena of the criminal justice system that we deal with. Whenever you can have people that can validate, or people that can really bring home or educate individuals, bring a level of credibility to the particular issue, it helps. And so having community partners, task force members there to be able to get that information out, to kind of serve as our disciples, if you will, in their respective communities and areas of expertise, is extremely helpful. Because look, at the end of the day, I realize that there's been people who are victims of crime, people who've been victimized, but also who may have come in contact with the criminal justice system as a defendant. They've been accused of a crime, right? And so their level of trust may be minimal, their level of trust of law enforcement and prosecution. So that's why it's important to have a diverse task force with community members and nonprofit organizations that have the tools, that have the means, and have better measures or means of communicating with these individuals and getting this information to those individuals, and creating and developing that rapport and trust And so credibility is important, right? It's one of the main components of being able to effectively communicate to an individual, whether it be interpersonal communications, whether it be larger scale communications. And when you're getting information out to those individuals, they're going to look to you to see how credible you are. And so if you have a group like Transclusive that's been offering so many services to members of our transgender community across the board, whether it be health, whether it be financial, economic, whether it be in the criminal justice realm, a member from that community is going to be more receptive to information coming from them. And so we recognize that, we understand that. And the same goes for members of our Jewish community. The same goes for members of our Muslim community, African American community, and the Hispanic community. So understanding those nuances and attacking them in that light really assists us in combating this evil that we know as hate.
It works both ways, doesn't it? Not only in getting the information out and educating people, but also in allowing victims to have a safe place to report a hate crime.
Right.
You mentioned that the numbers of hate crimes have ticked up, but how much is unreported?
There was studies done years ago, and I remember, according to national statistics, approximately like only 1/3 of hate crimes were reported each year, 1/3. And so, I remember at one point when we first started our hate crimes task force and our hate crimes unit, we only saw 9. There were only 9 hate crimes that were actually brought by our office, right?
Total.
Yeah, total, right? And that was a time period where only 8.6% of all hate crimes were reported, right? So you see, even that, when only 8.6 of the crimes were reported and we had 9 hate crimes actually filed, hey,
another 90 or so out there.
Another 90 or so out there that are being unreported. And that's across the board. And one of the reasons why that's the case, Ellen, what we found from our task force and also having conversations with various individuals, it's a lack of knowledge, both on the part of the individual reporting, but also law enforcement. Before our hate crimes unit was starting and before we got this task force to going, and it's one of the reasons why we created our task force, was that many of the law enforcement officers that were on the street, that were on the beat investigating these crimes, they were unaware of the hate crime statute. They were unaware of how it worked and how it served as an enhancer to certain crimes that were being perpetrated by these individuals. So it was a lack of information across the board. And because of our task force, us being able to educate our law enforcement partners, us being able to educate and provide information to our community partners, our community stakeholders, we were able to get information out. And so now more people understand, wait a minute, that's a hate crime, or that could be a hate crime. And I have to stress this, Ellen, because I like to do this in any forum that I'm on. Just because someone reports a hate crime doesn't necessarily mean that we'll be able to charge it as a hate crime. But being able to identify some of those factors, some of those identifiers that might lead you to believe that it's a hate crime, it's important, and to report it. And so we've noticed the increase in reports of hate crimes. And look, they don't always stick. We won't always be able to bring charges. However, it's good that we're reporting. It's good that our law enforcement partners are more aware and more cognizant of how the hate crime statute works and how it may apply in certain situations. And it's also helpful for us to be able to know that we have a community that's a lot more informed than it was before we started our hate crimes task force.
You do have a place on your website, browardsao.com, where someone can just fill out a form to report a hate crime. There's email to contact the hate crimes task force. What's the hotline number if someone either witnesses or feels they've been a victim of a hate crime?
Right. So first and foremost, in case of an emergency, always default to 911. I always say that, always default to 911. It's like the medical offices. If you call the medical office, your doctor's office, if this is an emergency, hang up and dial 911. That's the same for a hate crime. However, if it's a situation that it's not an emergency, you just report an occurrence that you may have seen and it's past or something's going on, and it's not of an immediate nature, you can contact our office. We have a hate crimes hotline dedicated solely for that purpose. It's 954-831-8059. Once again, that is 954-831-8059.
And we're with Broward County State Attorney Harold F. Pryor. We're talking about the Broward Hate Crimes Task Force. We have just a few minutes left, but I cannot let the segment go by without mentioning your Assistant State Attorney, Veronica Walker, who is in charge of the task force. What were your conversations with Veronica in getting this started?
Well, Veronica is tenacious. She's an amazing prosecutor, but also she's well versed and she has a heart for the community. And she was the perfect person for this job, perfect person to serve as the chair of our hate crimes task force, but also to bring people to the table, bring all the appropriate and necessary stakeholders to the table. And so my conversation with her was to create this big tent that addresses the issues, that looks at the statistics on a consistent basis, and we bring in whoever we need to bring in, expand it however we need to expand it to address these issues. And it wasn't just set to our initial core members who we identified based on our initial review of the numbers. And she took that and ran, and our task force has expanded. It's expanded to groups and individuals that I never really thought of, like individuals and groups, for example, that offer so many different services that we never thought of that we would need to address with our hate crimes task force. And that's a testament to Veronica Walker's forward thinking. It's a testament to her tenacity, and it's a testament to her acumen and competency, being able to deal with this issue and being able to really take this thing and run off with it. And she's been an amazing prosecutor. Not only does she chair our task force and she organized these task force meetings and continue the relationships with our task force, she's also prosecuting these cases. She has a full caseload. She has cases. She gets these calls. She works with law enforcement partners. She's assisting with those investigations. And then ultimately she's filing those cases and she's taking these cases to trial. And so she's been an amazing litigator and prosecutor and advocate for this issue of combating the evil of hate.
What can we in the public do to support your efforts, whether it's reporting a crime or volunteering as a witness? Can we volunteer to be on the task force? Can we start our own little group, a hate crimes unit in our own community?
Well, what I would recommend is if you see something, say something, call our number, call the 954-831-8059 number, or go to our website, BrowardSAO.com. Click on the hate crimes tab. We're always having events. We're always having forums. Come to the forum so you can learn, so you can be educated. If you're interested in joining our hate crimes task force, if we have openings, we'd be more than happy to accept people. So go to our website. There's a form for all of that where you can fill out information to be involved, but just be vigilant. The thing that I tell members of our community, be hyper vigilant, pay attention, keep your eyes open, pay attention to what's being said, what's being exhibited during the commission of an act. Some things that we might take lightly as just a slur or just a phrase could be something much bigger than what you think. And so it's okay to be mindful of that, report it. Don't be afraid to speak up, speak out, call either our hotline or 911 to report an incident or crime that you may be seeing happening in real time.
This is very sobering, and it is very important to be reminded that there are real people, our neighbors, who are affected by people, as you say, who are filled with hate. And I pray that someday we will advance as human beings to get beyond this. And certainly through your efforts, Harold, and those of Veronica, the Urban League of Broward County, and the other nonprofits that are participating in this, I believe progress will be made. Do you have a measure that you're trying to reach in terms of how you can say, yes, we've done it. We've made a big change. If not completely wiped it out, we've really accomplished something.
Right. And for me, yes, I know it's extremely optimistic of me. Yes, if we could drive out all hate crimes, that would be amazing. And I do believe that love can drive out darkness. I think love and light can drive out darkness if we are fully informed as a society and we're willing to open up to learn more about other people, to step outside of our comfort zone. And for me, the measuring stick is that we're able to provide more information and more education to the community, because I'm a strong believer across the board that the more educated, the more informed that we are as a society, the individual that might be more susceptible or who might commit a hate crime, they're now more educated and informed that, hey, there's a deeper meaning behind what I'm doing or who I'm hanging out with or what I'm associating myself with. And it's hurting a larger sector of people. And they understand fully the history of these individuals and that they are also human beings. We'll notice hate crimes go down substantially because they're more educated, right? And then on the other end, when our society is more educated, our victims are more educated, our law enforcement partners are more educated, and we're able to fight and combat this issue in court. We're able to maybe come up with preventive measures in the criminal justice system to keep these things from happening. And so for me, I think my measuring stick is Once I know and understand that we're able to touch people and various different means and mediums of information where they can get this information, where they can be fully educated and abreast as to what's going on and as to what this evil is, I think we'll be better overall as a society, and we'll definitely be better overall as a county.
Amen. And again, kudos to you. It takes a tremendous amount of empathy to look at someone who has committed a hate crime, who is on that side of things, and say, I can work with this person and I can try and turn them around and try to understand where they're coming from. That really takes a lot. And you are the epitome of what we talk about at the Community Foundation of Broward when we say lead with love. You are doing it every single day and engaging the public to do it with you, engaging all of your employees, law enforcement, the nonprofits. I thank you. I think of Broward County as a community, one big community, and you are contributing to making that reality.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Broward County State Attorney. You must have somebody that you have to go and prosecute now. Harold F. Pryor, it is absolutely a delight to speak with you. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Ellen. Have a good one.
You too. And before we close out today, a moment for Kirk's Corner. It is Kirk Englehardt, Vice President of Marketing and Communications at the Community Foundation of Broward. And Kirk, you yourself are a member of the Broward Hate Crimes Task Force. I'm kind of picturing you like Batman and Robin right now, doing your thing, but just being part of helping to end hatred in general is what a great way to spend your time.
Yeah, I don't think I'm heroic for doing this in any way, shape, or form, but I can tell you, the Community Foundation was involved right from the get-go when the first grant was being proposed, and they were going after the first grant to get this whole hate crimes task force started in Broward. And there were not many of these type of entities across the country. This is really unique. And I know other jurisdictions and other municipalities across the U.S. have looked to Broward to learn and see how we were able to pull all of these different entities and groups and people and law enforcement together to have these really important conversations about how we can educate our community about, number one, what a hate crime is, and number two, how to report it and demystify it, but also to communicate to would-be offenders about what happens when you commit a hate crime. The other side of the coin is some people might just think they're being cute or funny, and there's nothing cute or funny about what they're doing. They're actually committing a crime and they may not realize it. I'm not defending that behavior, but I think education is important so people don't get themselves in that situation or target other people in the first place. So when you talk about leading with love, that's really what we do here at the Community Foundation. And this fits right in. It's about loving your neighbors, loving your community, and doing everything you can to educate people and to make sure people realize what our shared humanity looks like.
Well, it was one of the things that I was so impressed with about the Broward Hate Crimes Task Force was how they had brought everything into a compact goal, which starts with education, educating law enforcement about what is a hate crime so they know how to respond properly, educating the public to what is a hate crime, why it's different from a regular crime, and how the penalties are greater. Then there's educating people how to report a hate crime. And one of the lovely things by involving nonprofits and community organizations, giving people a safe place to go to make a report or to talk about it. And then educating the people themselves, educating all of us so that we understand that everyone is to be accepted.
I think when people hear the term task force, they think it's a room full of detectives and cops, right? Maybe some lawyers.
All right, I gave you a cape. What can I say?
Yeah. But the reality is this is a group of people who care. It is law enforcement. It is the state attorney's office. But beyond that, it's nonprofit organizations, like the Urban League, the Jewish Federation, the Community Foundation, the United Way, and others that represent different groups within our community, all coming together and having good conversations about the issues and some of the potential solutions and how we could all work together, because this impacts every one of us, even if we're not part of a minority of any sort. It affects every single person in this community, and it makes the community a better place for all of us. when we get along and when we support each other.
So I'm going to give the information about how to contact the task force one more time. Very easy. You go to Broward SAO, which stands for State Attorney's Office, BrowardSAO.com, and you will find the links. You can call the hotline if you need to report something, 954-831-8059. And of course, if you want to be part of the solution, if you want to be part of bringing people together, you can go to the Community Foundation of Broward, find out about starting your own fund to support this kind of organization, or ask for Kirk and find out what it's like to be part of a task force like this that is making permanent change in our community, which goes hand in hand with what you do at the foundation by setting up legacy funds that go on in perpetuity for the future of Broward County as well as today.
All about leading with love.
Thank you so much, Kirk Englehardt, Vice President of Marketing and Communications at the Community Foundation of Broward. Visit us at cfbroward.org. I'm Ellen Jaffe. I hope you will check back with us right here on our YouTube channel regularly. Catch up on all of the podcasts you may have missed from the past, and we'll talk more about the issues that are happening in Broward County every month right here.
Thank you for listening to Bold Voices. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and hope you'll be inspired to join us in creating a better Broward for all. If you'd like more information, visit us online at cfbroward.org, and remember to always be bold.